Well, welcome to Pharmaceutical Soccer, a decidedly less chipper episode of Pharmaceutical Soccer after back-to-back league losses for the second time this year. Clay Tradham joined by Valer Shabilla and a not a new person, but a different person. Stephen Robinson is not joining us, as I'm sure you've figured out with me hosting. Ben Wright. So we've had a real upgrade this week, not only in terms of analysis, but in terms of background video. We've got much better stuff going on in the background with Ben Wright on the show in comparison to Stephen.
And as a reminder, if you want to see this video that Clay's talking about, just become a Capo member on 615soccer.com and you will be able to see Ben Wright's beautiful background and my beautiful background and Clay's beautiful background. So, do that.
I'm in my garage. Very, very fancy.
I've got scarves on one side and paper boxes on the other. So, just to paint a picture. But before we get into talking about that 3-1 loss for the boys in gold against St. Louis City FC, Valer's favorite team. First off, I want to ask you guys, how was your weekend?
Pretty good, I think, overall. Actually, it was really busy. It's been a busy few weeks. I'm leaving town to go to Chicago this week. I was just in Michigan, as listeners will know. And then when I come back from Chicago, the next morning, immediately I'm leaving for New York to go to the NYCFC Nashville game up there. So with all this travel, all the errands and random tasks get kind of put into one weekend. So a lot of cleaning. I got a new PC. That's been nice to kind of set up and a lot of stuff like that. But also the beta version of FC25 and for the not greatly named former FIFA game also came out. So I got access to the beta version and played a little bit of it, not a whole lot. They're still scamming you. It's the same game, but I'm still going to buy it.
I feel like FIFA has realized like they don't really have to be involved at all with EA to still be called FIFA. Sort of like Coca-Cola just buys ads during major events and isn't the official soda of whatever event they're doing, but people will just assume it. So, yeah, I'm going to always call it FIFA. I'm going to always call it Twitter. Right. It is what it is.
Yeah. It's definitely been. I mean, this is the third year where it's not called FIFA, and I haven't said the word EAFC until now. So I just figured I don't want to confuse. This is a soccer show. I don't want to confuse people. But Ben, how was your weekend? What were you up to?
Good. Kids went back to school on Thursday, so that was fun. And then we spent Friday afternoon and Saturday kind of recovering, getting ready for this week, which is their first full week of school. Ipswich started their season on Friday, so that was fun. I'm boring. Nothing super crazy. Nothing super exciting.
It is time to add some parental hosts on this show. And my money would have still been on Steven out of the three of us. But
to be fair, Steven is routinely getting sunned by both of us, Valer.
But yeah, I mean it's been a little it's been weird for Nashville SC because now there's this like week-long breaks pretty much until the end of the season. And it really puts in perspective having games every 3 days and what a difference that makes.
Well, I think we saw that quite a bit too with, this was like a good time if you're going to have some depth issues and some injury concerns. Have it when you're playing once a week. Don't have it when you're playing it, every few days. Although it's a bit of a bummer to come off of a break and then not, be fully healthy. But that being said, like let's get into my weekend was fine. I played Frosthaven. There you go. That was my weekend. Went to Evansville for a day. When you were watching the game, and I think we all said this in various ways across the Discord, which you can join if you're a 615 member, or on Twitter. In the moment, it felt like Nashville had blown its shot at really going for the supporter shield. And after the weekend, it felt like an opportunity lost, which is not the first time we've said that about Nashville this year, where the results fell Nashville's way and then Nashville didn't kind of see its way through. So you're sitting here, is Nashville a Supporter Shield team? It doesn't feel like one, but not a whole lot has changed from where they were a week ago. So what are your thoughts on going into that?
Yeah, I mean, I think Nashville is a really good team. I think they're one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. And I still think that maybe I, I feel like we got so caught up in the fact that they're better than we expected this year, that we're still also maybe forgetting that this is like one and a half windows into what we described at the beginning of the year as a multi-year rebuild. Um, so I think it's a weird. I'm still doing this weird balancing act in my head of like recognizing that they're really good and legitimately one of the elite teams in MLS right now, and also they're still growing and still developing. And we shouldn't be surprised that they're not maybe at the like the supporter shield level like throughout the whole season. I think they're still going to be relevant in the supporter shield race, but I think they have work to do, and we knew that going in. And I think um, maybe some of the like the unbeaten run and their position in the table and everything is kind of distracting from that. But this is still not a complete team yet.
Yeah, and I think on the supporter shield portion, which Clay was alluding to, Philadelphia drop point, Cincinnati drop point, Miami drop point. So it was really, you don't feel the loss as much as we thought we would feel it, right? And then I think that's, or as much as, yeah. So I think when you look at the Eastern Conference, the table really didn't change a whole lot. Orlando does shoot up to the top four, which is obviously really good. So there's two ways of looking at that if you're Nashville, right? The first thing is, Nashville is looking at an opportunity where they could have built some momentum and been 1 point away from the Supporters Shield leaders, Philadelphia. Or you could look at it as the loss doesn't mean as much because everybody else dropped points. So, it's a glass half full, glass half empty sort of thing. But regardless, you're still working on, improving Nashville. And I think the one thing, regardless, away from the Supporter Shield, away from all of that, one thing that everybody agrees on is that St. Louis is one of the worst teams in the league, and Nashville is one of the best teams in the league. And a loss to St. Louis is unexpected and also kind of disappointing to have at this point of the season.
I mean, it's the same
Yeah,
conversation we had with a 0-0 draw against DC earlier in the year.
Right.
yeah, like if Nashville doesn't win the Supporter Shield, this result, the DC result, are two of the main ones you're going to point to. What I will say, and I think this is a good reminder because I talked a little bit about it in the Discord during the game. It's worth remembering, MLS is not, in terms of like a week to week competition, is not an easy league. No, most teams aren't that much better than other teams because that's the way the league is built. And I think this weekend is a good reminder of that as well. So, like, St. Louis is not a good team. Nashville shouldn't be losing to St. Louis. Nashville's on the road. All the other teams that are graded out around the same time as Nashville were also losing games. Orlando obviously is a good team that they did beat Miami, but like we see nonsensical results happen more often in this league than maybe we would in La Liga or in Bundesliga. The Premier League's prone to the occasional weird result, but like generally speaking, you don't see the sort of parity that happen at the same level as you do in MLS. And I think this weekend is a good reminder of that. Sometimes weird results happen in this league more often than weird results happen in other leagues.
I mean, and even looking at the other supporter shield kind of contenders results, I mean, they are in a similar boat to Nashville. I mean, Philadelphia, you don't want to drop points at home to Toronto. I mean, they equalized in stoppage time to Toronto equalized in stoppage time to steal a point. Vancouver lost to San Jose. That's a bad result for them. Minnesota, I mean, they're kind of on the fringe of the supporter shield result, but they lost at home to Colorado. That's a bad result for them. Even Cincinnati and Charlotte. I mean, Charlotte are on a hot streak, but just looking at the positions in the table, since Cincinnati don't want to lose that game at home. Nashville weren't the only ones this week who lost a result to a team that, like on paper, they should beat pretty handily.
Yeah. Yep. To quote Valaire. We kind of just talked about it a second ago. I do think like we're starting to see a little bit more of this realization of like, okay, let's maybe wind the necks back in a little bit on Nashville as a supporter shield team. Uh, it does feel like there's been a bit of a vibe shift, not a huge one, but a noticeable one. And like, okay, this is not a perfect team. There are holes in this team. We're going to talk about that a little bit in the second segment. But have you picked up on that vibe shift among some of the supporters?
I've seen some, I think it's a lot more measured than previous vibe shifts that we've experienced in this market. I think there's a lot of appreciation for what has been built already. But also, I think that appreciation is soon going to be expectation. And it has already turned into expectation for this season, but definitely going forward. This is, I don't want to say like Nashville has nothing to lose here and they should just go for it. No, it's not nothing to lose. They have a lot to lose and they have a lot on the line. But it's almost a free hit, really, for BJ Callahan and his squad to be a Supporters Shield contender. Because next year, if they are in the same exact position, people are looking at that as, just an expectation. This year, they have that element of surprise, and they are able to be that team that maybe surprises people. So, all that said, I think the fan reaction is a fair one. I think expectations should be higher than in the beginning of the season. And for maybe the first time ever, I think it's fairly a measured conversation online about, for the most part, about Nashville SC and what they're capable of doing.
I don't want it to go unnoticed that Valer just used a cricket cliche, calling it a
Which is
free hit.
what? Which one?
A free hit. So I don't want to
Oh.
let it be known that I wasn't the one who used a cricket cliche on this show. It was Valer.
I didn't know it was a cricket cliche.
I know you didn't know, which is the reason why I'm pointing it out. Well, we've got a lot to talk about on this week's show. Obviously, we're going to be talking about the St. Louis game a little bit more in detail. Also, there was another Tennessee team that did something notable, and we will be talking about that a little bit later. But before we shift segments, we do want to remind you that you can rate and review Pharmaceutical Soccer on Apple Podcasts. You can send us a comment on Spotify. We do look at all those. We will read any 5-star review right here on this show, and we have a 5-star review this week from Carlos Rusalin. I apologize if I pronounced that incorrectly. He says, reply, forward, forward, forward. I still listen every week. I feel like this podcast could have been an email. So we read everything that we get sent, and that is a 5-star review. So if you want a 5-star review to be read on here, please make sure you go to Apple Podcasts and put it on there.
I wonder what episode he was talking about now.
It was the last one. So
that's what we did, a trivia game. I guess you could do a trivia game via email. I don't know.
Technically, if you subscribe to 615 Soccer,
name read, and so shout out to Carlos.
And if you subscribe to 615 Soccer, these podcasts are emails. So
hey, that's marketing right there.
Yes, exactly. So we'll be back with a little bit more about the St. Louis game. You're listening to Pharmaceutical Soccer. Welcome back to Pharmaceutical Soccer. Clay Train. I'm joined by Valer Shabilla and Ben Wright, both of them of 615soccer.com, the best place to get all your Nashville SC news and notes, and Nashville soccer news and notes, as it were. Please check them out. Become a subscriber, join our Discord, do all the things that let us know that you really support soccer in Nashville, I guess. Kind of fell apart there. Speaking of falling apart, Nashville SC against St. Louis City over the weekend. I think that there's a lot of things that we can focus on that maybe weren't the most positive from that game, but I do think that there are some things that you can look at and say, okay, maybe there's something to learn there. One of those things, and this is a fairly basic observation, but I do think like, especially that opening period, you saw how good or how influential Hani Mukhtar can be, even if things didn't come off. The fact that he was still finding space on his own when you're not really like, that's obviously the one guy that you're looking at probably more than anyone else, even though Sam Surge is having that. Hani Mukhtar got into some really good spaces. He did score a goal from a penalty. I do think he could have been more influential, but the opening 20 minutes, I think there was a lot to like with what Nashville SC was doing. It just kind of didn't go well from there on out.
Yep. No, I think for Mukhtar specifically, he was the guy trying to make things happen, and he was relentless in his sort of push, and I think that sets a really good example for the team. You know, a couple of years ago, before he had the armband for a few games, before he was sort of maybe he was a little, I don't know, I don't want to say like less talkative, but maybe he didn't show his personality fully on the media or to his teammates, but he's always been this guy that he shows you what he's capable of on the pitch. And that's got to be a huge inspiration for everybody around him. And not just the young players. We talk about young players all the time, but like all the players that are on the pitch. If you see the highest paid player on the team, the guy who has won MVP and proved his worth to the league and to the team and has nothing else left to prove pretty much, out there playing like he has something to prove, that's going to have to push you into that next level. And I think that's something that maybe doesn't get mentioned when we talk about leadership roles. We talk about the Walker Zimmerman sort of leadership role, which is more discussing things and talking about things and bringing everybody together. But the on pitch stuff, that could be a leadership role on its own. And that's the guy like Hani Mukhtar out there, just regardless of what's going on, regardless of Nashville being 1-0 down or 3-0 down, he's out there doing this work and defending and attacking just the same, which kind of motivates everybody around him, makes them better.
Well, and I think like that was even after Nashville gave up a goal, it gave up 2 goals. I don't feel like the intensity level dropped off crazily. And I think we've seen times where Nashville gives up a goal and maybe the intensity level doesn't drop off. And I think that specifically is what I see in Honey, but like the execution was terrible for huge chunks of that game. But I never felt like the intensity level dropped, and I think that that is something that like has been drilled into them under Callahan, especially this season.
Yeah, I think they looked really good for the first 15, 20 minutes too. I think even before St. Louis scored, they probably should have scored a goal or two themselves. They had some really good moments in transition, and I think back to that chance that Hani was kind of driving at the back line and had Sturridge on the overlap and just mishit the pass. Probably should have played it to Eddie Tagseth. But I mean, that the kind of thing where they get into really good spots and just the final decision isn't quite right. And we've seen it from them before a lot this year. I think they're still kind of working on being efficient in the final third. They score a lot of goals, but they also leave a lot of goals on the table. Um, and I think the St. Louis game was one that it came back to bite them. I also think it kind of showed how dependent they are on that right side, because everything they did played through. It was all Andy Nahar to Hani Mukhtar. They were trying to get Patrick Kjosbeck involved, and he got involved. I just don't think that's not his game, and he's not the type of player to do those kind of quick passes in the final third that you'll get from even Alex Wheel when he came on the left hand side. You saw them kind of be able to switch out to the left side and build out from the left. They had a really good interchange right before Gaston Brugman hit the post, where it was Mukhtar and Alex Wheel and Gaston Brugman. And so they're still super dependent on that right side, and it leaves Sam Surridge pretty uninvolved for a lot of the game. I mean, his touch percentage among strikers is pretty low. I mean, he's equating for about 4.8% of Nashville's total touches. So he's just not getting involved, and I don't think it's a coincidence that as Nashville have in the past couple games, I think been even more dependent than usual on the right hand side, that Surge is kind of quieting off a little bit.
I do. I mean, obviously, Dan Levitt's not plays a role in the left-handed side not being as effective, but I do think that there have been times this season where they've lost a bit of that balance. And I think it has been in games like this. Like that was the one thing that used to drive me nuts last year was like, obviously you've got Shaq Moore as a right back, so it makes sense that you would be a little bit more right-sided. But both Nashville's fullbacks have been exceptional this season in providing goals and assists, and that has a lot to do with Dan Lovitz having, one of his best seasons. Now, Levitt didn't play, but I do think if you look at the last couple months, like last month, maybe last month and a half, it does feel as Andy Nahar has kind of gotten this like defender of the year push. Things have gotten a little less balanced going forward. So yeah, I mean, I understand in the context of the St. Louis game how it would work out that way, but I do think that is indicative of a trend that we've seen in recent weeks as well.
I think I'm gonna count this as a positive, even though it might not be a positive, is the willingness of BJ Callahan to try things, taking risks, even at this point of the season. I think when you look at what this team has been able to do, is a lot of players taking risk, a lot of players backing themselves up, and a lot of players saying, I think I can do it, and that comes from BJ Callahan. And at one point, your words are only worth your actions, right? So then, when it comes down to it, and BJ Callahan was able to take a risk, he did take it. And yes, it didn't pan out. The risk, the tactically shifting, and when I did my ratings article after the game, I did dock his rate a little bit because essentially the risk didn't pay off. But the action of actually taking a risk, even at this point of the season, shows that he's flexible, that he is a coach that is willing to try some things.
For clarity's sake, we're talking about Wyatt Meyer at left back, correct?
No, also having Eddie Taxeth and Brugman while Yazbek plays higher up. Eddie Taxeth and Brugman being back, but also Wyatt Meyer as well. And that's something we've praised him for in the past, and I want to continue to praise him for the action of risk taking, knowing very well that risks don't always pan out. That's why it's a risk. It's not a guaranteed thing, right? So I just think BJ Callahan pretty much put his money where his mouth is, and actually did what he was preaching.
I think we can praise him for being willing to try things, and also point out when I think he got stuff wrong, and I think he did get it wrong. I don't know what was going on with Alex Muyl, if there was stuff going on behind the scenes that meant that he couldn't start, but it does feel strange to have Wyatt Meyer play at left back and then Johnny Perez in front of him. I think Perez is a great player. I think he's more comfortable on the right side. I would have liked to see him on the right, especially because I think he, kind of like what I was talking about earlier, I think he fits in with that kind of with the style that Nahar and Mokhtar like to play. I think he can combine with him better. And then if you're going to put Wyatt Meyer at left back, who is first of all a rookie, second of all not a left back, it makes sense to have a guy like Alex Muyl in front of him who can help out with the defensive work. And I think you saw Meyer, Klaus's goal in the second half to make it 2-0 and really end the game was just poor positioning by Meyer. He was isolated, and then Perez didn't get back and help him defensively. And I don't think it fixes everything, but I do think having a guy like Muyl who just does so much defensive work, I think that mitigates it a little bit and makes it less of a risk.
I think the two worst performances, I think, by Nashville SC, I think most people would agree, are this one and Seattle away. I don't think that it is shocking that those are two performances where I think you could point to getting the tactics wrong from the start. I do think that there was a way back into this game for Nashville. I mean, it almost really happened with. I don't think we need to focus too much on the VAR call towards the end, because who knows what would have happened. But like, there was almost a way back into this game for Nashville, and I think that is attributed also to coaching and finding a way back into a game where you're down 3-0 at one point, and bar a call towards the end, you would have had 5 minutes to find an equalizer, and with all the momentum in the world on your side. So I do think I said it a lot in the build up to the season, and then I haven't said it a lot in the last several months. It is worth remembering BJ is also doing the head coaching job for a club for the first time. And last year, if we're going to call last year kind of not a real full way of getting that sort of experience, just given not building the team and whatnot, you can look at the season and say there are going to be things that happen, whether it's tactically, whether it's lineup choice, that third year BJ Callahan wouldn't do. but first year BJ Callahan will do, because it's on the job learning. That's just part of the deal when you get a first year manager.
I think it's worth pointing out too that there have been a very small handful of times that I think he's got the tactics wrong from the start. So first of all, I think it's impressive just the amount to which he's limited that, and I don't think it's been a recurring issue. I also think, to his credit, his substitutions typically work and they typically improve things. And even against St. Louis, I don't think, some people might not want to hear it, but I think Nashville were better with Teal Bunbury on the pitch than they were with Sam Surridge, and that might. I think there is a little bit of a conversation like taking off the Golden Boot leader with 20 minutes left to go when you need goals. That was a little bit of a weird choice, but I also think Teal Bunbury got involved in a way that Surridge hadn't, and he kind of gave them more of a focal point. I don't think he's not super clean in the final third, and I think we all know that that's a position that they need to upgrade in the final third. But I do think having a guy like that who can come in for 15, 20 minutes and give Sam Surridge a break and just give them a different look, I think is valuable. I think they were better with him on the field. I think Alex Muyl getting on helped. Um, yeah, so I don't know. I was disappointed with kind of how things started, but I do think there is something to be said for the fact that Nashville typically they definitely make adjustments at halftime that improve things pretty much every week. And by the time they start making substitutions, I think those typically improve the team as well.
And lastly, we don't want to just keep going on the selection, because I think all three of us have said enough about it in terms of how we didn't think, and it was the best way to take a step forward. And obviously, hindsight is 2020 here. I just want to be clear. If Nashville had won this game, we'd be praising how BJ, changed the tactics and
It'd be like the Open Cup game. It'd be
right, and that's to an extent what sports are. But I do want to say I really truly do not believe that Patrick Yazbek is getting the best out of Patrick Yazbek, putting him in that position. I don't think him at right wing / right, I don't know, midfielder, whatever you want to call it. I just don't think that's his position to have. I do think, I think we've seen it a few times, maybe a couple times, where he comes in the last 10 minutes in that position to kind of close things out. And I really like that. I think that makes sense to me. I don't see how or why he needs to be called upon in that position again. And this is not a dig on Yazbek. I think he's a phenomenal, really good MLS defensive midfielder. And I think he does pretty much as good of a job as Eddie Taxeth, maybe just doesn't get as much praise as Eddie Taxeth. But I just think him and Eddie Taxeth in those defensive line positions is maximizing the strengths of Nashville SC and the strengths of those two players.
It does feel to me like, now you guys, I'm perfectly happy to be disagreed with here, but I do think, like, as more tape and more games have been played, we've seen the central midfield for Nashville was the story for a ton of the opening half of the season. It was a big story on why Nashville was good. I do think we've seen the effectiveness of them kind of go back a little bit over the last month or so. Again, this is small sample window. This is teams learning that Nashville is legit. There's a lot of things that are, and part of me wonders if he's just moving guys around a little bit just to see if they can expand what they can do, just to get a sense of it. Because like Eddie Taxeth has come off earlier the last few times he's been out there, whereas early in the season you wouldn't have. I mean, if he came off late. Like you wouldn't have seen him coming off in the way that he has recently.
I also think like we're seeing how much Callahan likes Gaston Brugman, and I think he's got a lot of flack, and I don't think he's been great like every time he's played this season, but I do think he gives them something completely different, and just the way that he tries passes, I think he sees different passes than any other midfielder. Yazbek and Taxeth do a lot of just running and covering ground and winning possession back high up the field, but they're not the greatest at like consistently playing entry passes into the box. They'll occasionally have like a couple really good ones, but Brugman just does it consistently, and he's consistently looking for that pass. And I think you get him on the field with a trade-off of he's going to get beat defensively a few times, and he doesn't cover ground the same way. But I think we're starting to see, like, I'm kind of looking at these next 8 games as like Callahan preparing for the playoffs, and I think getting Brugman on the field in games where you want to be like the protagonist and dictating tempo. I think that's really important to him, and I think we're going to see a lot more of that down the stretch.
There's also something that I want to bring up about Ben. You were in those press conferences, and BJ and the team kind of talked about the prep time and how much prep time they had for St. Louis. And I don't know, maybe this is Galaxy brain, but like, is there sort of a point where there's too much prep for this one team, and then Nashville maybe overthought it, or BJ Callahan maybe overthought the St. Louis game a little bit? Because if this was a game that they had only 3 days to prepare for, I don't think BJ would go for these sort of changes. Not think he would have stuck with what would have worked 3 days ago. So I don't know. Is there something to be said about that, or is that just Galaxy brain stuff?
Yeah, maybe. I think Hani, what he said after the game was interesting, just how he thought they should have given St. Louis the ball more and kind of invited them to come upfield, and instead they just turned it. But there was no midfield in the game for the first 20, 25 minutes. It was just all transition. And so I think St. Louis aren't a great team with the ball, and I think maybe in retrospect it would have made more sense to kind of give them the ball a little bit and sit a little bit deeper, maybe in more of a mid block, and kind of have more space to break into the other way. But I mean, I do like St. Louis weren't fantastic. Like I think the score line kind of flatters them a little bit. I mean, the first goal they scored was an unreal angle that I think Orozco probably scores 2 out of 10 times. It's not a super repeatable chance.
Yeah.
Even
I would argue that possession started off with an offside ball too that they didn't go back to.
sure, yeah. I mean, but like just even the finish, that's a chance that normally you'll be okay with allowing, because normally it's not going to score. Like you see guys smash those shots. I mean, I don't even know if it was a shot. Like he just hit it hard across the box to see what would happen. Even Klaus's goal. I mean, he was out of position, but they did a good job kind of forcing him into a bad angle. That's not a high probability shot. One that probably Joe Willis does better with most of the time. So I think Willis had kind of an unfortunate time to have an off night, but it's not like they they didn't give up a ton of great chances. And I mean, I guess to kind of go back on what I said about Willis, like they gave a handful of good chances to St. Louis, and Willis did really well with them. I mean, he had that double save on the line. He had the one that he tipped over. So I don't know. It was weird because they scored those chances. Normally, if they allow the same type of chances in a game, you're not going to give up 3 goals. And so I think I don't think Nashville were great by any means, but I also think they were much better than 3-1. And it's probably a game that they can do better with if they play that game 4 or 5 times.
They did win the all-important XG battle, of course.
I think they lost it by 0.01.
But the
depending on your sources, they won
depending on
American soccer analysis, baby.
I do. One of the things that really stuck out to me, and this is what sticks out to me in a lot of games where Nashville struggles to find a goal, it feels like Nashville ran out of ideas early. I think that they fell in love with, and maybe this goes into the training component that Valera was talking about. It felt like everything was designed on through balls, and St. Louis dealt with those all day. And Nashville never really went away from that until it got later on in the game, and it came for like desperate times. But everything was get it. Maybe it's a through ball out wide. Maybe you can play them through the middle. Maybe a little bit of craftiness. You can be, and just St. Louis just dealt with it over and over and over again, sort of in the same way that Nashville used to fall in love with crossing. Yeah. It just felt like the ideas went away a little bit earlier than you'd expect. Certainly. With the type of creative talent that Nashville has on its roster.
I also thought Falu Fall for St. Louis was awesome. I mean, he's a U22 center back, first game with them. I think he's played like 10 games at the like senior professional level, and he came in and he just read everything. And I think he was shaded towards that left side, or Nashville's right side, kind of where everything was coming up. So I think, especially with Yazbek kind of playing on that right side, maybe not being as good 1v1, he just was able to kind of eat up everything. And I thought he was awesome. I mean, so not specifically Nashville rated, but I'm excited to watch more of him.
Yep.
All right. Well, ultimately, disappointing result for Nashville SC. But, they keep trucking along. They're still, treble is still in play, guys. Treble is still in play. Nashville is not out of it yet when it comes to the Supporters Shield, and they're certainly not out of it yet when it comes to the U.S. Open Cup and MLS Cup later this year. So we'll be back and talking about everything when Nashville gets back on its winning ways. But for now, we'll just move on to the next segment and talk about a Nashville team that did, or a Nashville area team that did win over the weekend. You'll listen to Pharmaceutical Soccer. And welcome back to Pharmaceutical Soccer. Clay Trainer joined by Valeria Shabilla and Ben Wright. Now, we've teased it, but it is worth noting that Nashville SC is not the only soccer team, in the area, and it's not the only soccer team that we care about. Obviously, we talk about the high-level women's teams here in Nashville. We talk about the higher-level men's amateur teams in Nashville as well. And while just below that level, there is a team called the Tennessee Tempo, TN Tempo. They used to be Beeman United FC back in the day for the hardcore UPSL folks. But Tennessee Tempo went to the national semifinals over the weekend, and they won a couple games, which means that they are your UPSL national champions. They played down in Murfreesboro. They played this season at Oakland High School. They've played at various points at Siegel over the years. Again, second trip that they've made to the national final. So really, really impressive run. And ultimately, like, the more teams that your community has, it's more of a tell of what the growing soccer community within a city. And I think that, we talk about the USL League 2 teams or the USLW teams or the WPSL teams, Nashville itself, formerly an MPSL team. This is in that group of amateur teams. There are former professional players that have played for Tennessee Tempo this year, previous years. Guys that have played against and with Nashville SC over the years have also been part of that Tennessee Tempo side. And so they made a national run in a national tournament. And at the end of the day, the national champion has a crest with 3 stars in a circle on it, which is what you want to see as a local down here.
Yep. No, actually, it's a pretty nice thing to see at any level, really, when it comes to soccer in this area, because soccer in this area isn't like LA or Southern California in general, or even a DC or anything like that, or Dallas, of course. Those are sort of hotbeds of soccer, and Nashville is not one of those. Middle Tennessee is not one of those. Even just this area, if you want to talk about the South in general, is not one of those. So seeing these things pop up is always nice, and it's not just the UPSL level, but collegiate level. We've had really good Lipscomb teams recently. Vanderbilt women have been pretty good recently as well. So there's stuff from the collegiate level, the semi-pro level, which is still building up the semi-pro level here. I think that's sort of the next step, maybe for a big city like Nashville, is to build up that maybe lower division pro, but not necessarily amateur. And we're seeing teams pop up, and maybe they don't exist for a long period of time, but hopefully we'll have a couple that will stick around. So it's positive, and it's really good to see a Nashville area team have national recognition, even if it's at that level.
Ultimately, and also, if you have a rising tide lifts all boats, and just having more outlets for people to play. I may have this stat a little off, but if it's off, it's only off by 1 or 2. There's only been 1 player from the state of Tennessee to ever play for the U.S. men's national team. So that gives you a sense of his former Nashville Metro, Richard Mulrooney, by the way, if anyone cares. He's the head coach at Memphis. But like, that gives you a sense of just how far behind the state and the area are in terms of producing talent at all levels. And it's easy to say, well, an adult amateur team doesn't produce talent at that level, but having outlets for people to continue playing, for people to stay involved in the game, and then maybe train their kids and so on and so forth, that's what ultimately leads to producing more and more talent.
I was going to guess Jack McInerney, but I think he only played for the U23s. I was going to say for Tempo, if you haven't seen the game-winning goal from yesterday, go check it out. It's an awesome goal. Dominic Aduro, not that Dominic Aduro, the USL Dominic Aduro, but a great goal, and they're going to be in the Open Cup next year, which is awesome.
I'm now checking. Yeah, Jack McInerney never got to the senior national team. I was like, do I have it wrong? You got close. But
Also, shout out to the Open Cup because it's a mention, and would be nice if they can win a couple games and play against Nashville. That would be pretty nice, honestly.
yeah, it'd be great. I mean, I remember when former Nashville SC player Michael Reed was part of that team when it was called Beeman United. They played an Open Cup game down here at MTSU against the famed Des Moines Menace, which at that point hadn't gone fully into the MLS Vets,
Yeah.
10-year ago All-Star game roster build, but it would have been great if it had. So, any of you guys see anything around getting back to MLS? Any of you guys see anything around MLS that you found interesting this past week?
Orlando curb stomped Miami. That was a fun game.
Well, yeah.
I do think it's like worth it to mention just to keep going on the Orlando thing, because for the longest time we were looking at the top 5 teams in the East, like, oh yeah, these are the top 5 teams in the East. But now you're looking at top 6. And then really, if you think about it, NYCFC and Charlotte aren't too far from that. So are we really looking at the top 8 teams in the East? I don't know.
And Nashville still have to play Orlando twice too.
Right. So, and I think these teams are all going to take points from each other, including Nashville and Orlando. But coming up in the East, I just feel like at this point we have to say this. Philadelphia are playing actually Red Bulls in the Open Cup in the midweek. So that will determine what happens to Nashville. So keep an eye out on that. Cincinnati has to go to Portland. That's a pretty tough matchup, even though Portland is kind of whatever, sometimes good, sometimes maybe not so good. We had an incident last episode. I'm not Nashville obviously at NYCFC, but Orlando has a pretty easy match at home against Sporting Kansas City. And Columbus has a pretty easy road trip to Toronto. However, and Inter Miami play LA Galaxy. So all of those 3 teams are having a really easy trip, but they all had easy trips this week, and we all know how that turned out. So
you call it easy. No one knows what's going to happen in the Trillium Cup in Toronto.
That is true. You told me what that was like earlier this year, I think. Before that, I had no idea what it was.
I think it's also worth. I mean, we talked about it a few weeks ago, but San Diego, the Eastern team starts to beat up on each other now. San Diego is sitting there looking pretty good as a Supporter Shield contender, getting a couple wins and kind of getting back on track out there as well.
Yeah, and I think Seattle still has something to say when it comes to the West, and I really think they are a team that knows how to win. They are 5 unbeaten now, I think, something along those lines in all comps. So I think they're gonna be fighting for that top spot in the West. But Minnesota and Vancouver are also in the mix, obviously. So finally, the West is kind of catching up a little bit in terms of excitement.
And then one last thing around the league, that if you haven't had your requisite amount of annoyance at Pro, I would invite you to go watch the Diego Luna sending off from over the weekend, where he was given a second yellow, which is a red card, which is not reviewable. Then they reviewed with the foul and gave the person who fouled him a red card, but they can't take away the yellow card. So the red card on Diego Luna resulted in both of them being ejected.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you for explaining that.
So,
by the way, Seattle are 10 unbeaten. I cut that in half. They are.
And honestly, it feels like 15, with one of those being an absolute shellacking of
7-0. Yeah.
What are you guys thinking going into this NYCFC game?
I think for New York, and I'll have Ben's thoughts as well. They've just been a little inconsistent this season, but they have 2, players who are performing for them. Alonso Martinez has 12 goals. Hannes Wolf has 9. So it's not like they're not getting the goals. Things have always just been a little inconsistent with NYCFC, and it's been like this ever since they won MLS Cup in 2021, right? 22, 21, one of those. It's just been like this, where they are always in the playoff conversation, never below that, but never really enough to be an actual contender. And I think it's a little annoying. Maxi Morales is still there. You're probably wondering, he's like 85 at this point. He's still playing there. They did participate in the abomination that is the Leagues Cup and lost 2 out of the 3 games. They won one though. So yeah, it's really hard to put an actual prediction on what they will look like. But again, this is another game where Nashville SC will go in as probably still favorites, even regardless of the results that've been going on. So with that in mind, Nashville SC should be looking to win.
I think
As
Nashville
the
matchup.
resident old guy on here, I take offense to Valaire saying that about a man who is younger than me.
He's just been playing for a long time.
He's 38. He's a month younger than me.
I think Nashville match up with them pretty well. Especially, it's unfortunate for them. Keaton Parks is out again with some of the same kind of blood clot issues that he's been dealing with for what feels like forever. But I think he came on. I think at halftime in the 2-2 draw, and I thought he was kind of the main reason that New York got back in the game, and I thought he looked really, really good for them. I think, yeah, they like to play with the ball and keep things pretty tight, which Nashville like to keep things really compact too. And I think Nashville, for whatever reason, I feel like Nashville's press lines up really well with how they want to play. So yeah, I don't know. It's tough to win on the road, but I think this should, knock on wood, be a better game for Nashville than last weekend.
All right. So what do you guys got? First off, plug yourself. What are you guys predicting?
Am I going? Yeah, check out 615soccer.com. I am predicting a 2-1 Nashville win.
You gotta give us 2 goal scorers.
Surridge for both.
Wow, doubling the double. Didn't he score both at home against NYCFC? Yeah,
he did.
Okay,
2 assists for Matt Corcoran.
Yeah, 615soccer.com as well for me, and also at Valaire Shabilla on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, all that fun stuff. Also check out Kicking It 615. We are a local nonprofit who help kids who can't afford soccer play soccer free of charge, and we would like your help. Go to ki615.org. If you want to volunteer, you can volunteer. If you want to donate, you can donate. If you have a business and you want to sponsor a team, we would love that. Just hit us up. We are so happy to take your help. ki615.org and at kickingit615. Prediction time. I will go for a 2-0 Nashville win. I think it's going to go back to winning ways. I don't think Nashville will continue this streak of losing games, and I think the goals are going to come from Hani Mukhtar and Jacob Schaffelberg, who will start that match, because I am doing hot takes here, I guess. That's my prediction.
All right, and then I'm at Clay LaSoul on Instagram and Twitter. I've made it this long without mentioning the fact that Everton signed Jack Grealish today, so follow the Nashville Evertonians. And you can also check out the Nashville Soccer Archive. If you are someone who has collected Nashville Soccer memorabilia or items from over the years and you don't know what to do with them, I have the perfect place for you. It is at Vanderbilt University. Please reach out to me, like I said, at Clay LaSoul on Twitter or on Instagram, and we will make sure that we will keep your items safe and available to the public so they can check out these important pieces of Nashville history over the decades and realize that Nashville is more than Nashville SC, and the history of the sport in the city is a lot deeper. As for what's going to happen in this game, I'm predicting a Nashville win as well. I do think it'll be a bit of a nervy first half, and then Nashville will turn it on in the second half and win 2-0. Goals from, you know what? Screw it. I'm gonna echo Ben here. Both from Surridge. I think Surridge is he doesn't tend to score just one goal, and I think he's aching to get back on that score sheet after the last couple games. So, go ahead, Valaire.
Yep.
It's the theme of the episode, and you know the other theme of the episode is Steven talking about being here all the time and then immediately being gone. So we will see Steven potentially next week. We'll see what happens. And if he's not here, we are taking your resumes for being the new host of Pharmaceutical Soccer. Please leave those resumes at Apple Podcasts with a 5-star review, and we will read your resume. Or if Steven's here, we'll have Steven read the resume of his potential replacement next week on Pharmaceutical Soccer. Thanks for listening, y'all.